Hello everybody, my name is Aayush and in today's video I'll be sharing pros and cons of Touchsoft markers. One of the most asked questions on my channel is which markers do you use and where do you get them? So in today's video I'll be sharing each and everything what I have observed and I know about Touchsoft markers. I have been using them for more than 7 months now. So it's time to answer all of your questions. So these are the markers that I have been using since quite a long time now. So one is a square shaped twin marker and the other is a triangular shaped twin marker. You can see better like this. So as you can see, the first one is a square shaped marker and the second one is a triangular shaped marker, but in functioning they work the same and they don't have any other difference except their shapes. They have their color identities and numbers and their names. As you can see here, on both the sides of cap they have their numbers and names, which are very useful to identify them if you have a set of markers. Now they have a fine tip and a broad tip on both the ends of the marker, just like Copic. They also have a gray line towards the fine tip to locate fine tip more easily before using any marker. So this made it a lot easier to find it. So as you can see here, this is a fine tip where the gray line was, and on the other end we have a broad tip, just like the Copic. I use broad tip when I have to color a larger area in any drawing, which saves my time. And for coloring other areas, I mostly use the fine tip. Many of you have also asked me whether it's a brush tip or not. Yes, it's a brush tip, but as compared to Copic, its brush tip is comparatively smaller in size, but it still does its work. So let's test its ink and nib. I'll first scribble some ink, color ink on the paper to see the ink flow of the marker, and it will take a few seconds to dry up. I'm using BG1 blue gray, which is a very light shade of blue gray. Our ink has dried up and as you can see we have a very clear and smooth result. It is evenly spread out on the paper. To get a smooth and even layer of color, our hand movement plays a very important role. While coloring, I try to move my hand in the same speed to get an even layer of color, but if I move my hand too fast, then ink won't spread out evenly on the paper. For example, like this, if I do it very quickly, as you can see there are white spots and white strips between where I have colored, and it's not smooth and clear like I did before. Same principle applies when I move my hand too slow. When I'm moving my hand too slow, a lot of ink is coming out, as you can see. That's why it's getting really dark shade here, the result of slow movement of hand, and this is result of fast movement of hand. You can clearly see the difference. This one has white strips in between and it's not so clear and evenly spread, and on the other hand, where I move my hand slowly, we have a darker shade of the same color. So while coloring, I try to move my hand with the same speed, not too fast, not too slow, but somewhere in between, and that's how we get a clear and evenly spread ink of our color. One of the most helpful feature of any alcohol based marker is that you can create 2 to 3 shades of the same color by just adding more and more layers to it. For example, here we have already added the first layer, and if I again color it from above by adding the second layer, we will get a darker shade of the same color. After the ink is dried, we can see the difference between the first layer and second layer of the same color shade. First layer is light and second layer is darker in shade. If we add one more layer of the same color shade, we'll get again a darker shade of the same color. This is really helpful while coloring because you can shift between color shades by using the same color. So that was about the ink. Now let's test its nib. Many of you have also asked what kind of nib it has. Well, it has a brush tip, as you can see here, but its brush tip is comparatively smaller than Copic because we can get thick and thin lines by using the brush tip, which is the main feature of a brush tip. I'll show you. We can get thick lines like this by putting a slight pressure on the brush tip, and also we can get thin lines by using the tip of the brush tip and not applying so much pressure, just like this. So as you can see the difference between these lines. The other tip we have is the chisel tip, which is also a broad tip. I usually use this tip where I have to color a larger area on a paper. I'll just scribble some of the ink by using the broad tip. After the ink is dried, as you can see, we have a very clear and smooth result of our color. There are no white spots and white strips in between. Again, hand movement is really important here because if you move your hand really fast, then you won't give time for ink to settle down on the paper, which will result in white spots or white streaks on the paper, and the result won't be smooth and evenly spread out. So make sure your hand movement is on the same momentum, not too fast, not too slow. So that was about its ink and nib. Now let's test how well it blends. I'm again using the same color BG1, which is light blue gray. I'll add a layer of it on the paper, which is evenly spread out. So I'll make sure my hand movement is moving at the same speed. And now I'll jump to BG3, which is a darker shade on the same color shade. And now let's see how well it blends. For that I'm again jumping into BG1, which was the lighter shade, and again I'm just adding it above both the color. As you can see, it blends okay, not so good and not so bad either. I'll do it again with the darker shade, which is BG5 on the same color shade, that is blue gray. And for blending, again I'll use BG1, the lightest color I used, and I'll try to blend it. So by looking at our results, we can make out that it did blend, but there is still a little more scope of blending further. So in comparison to Copic, it is not as good as Copic in blending, but it's not so bad either. So if you are okay with average blending, you can definitely go for Touchsoft markers. So that was our blending result. Let's move on to its next feature. This is again one of the most asked question by you all, that are these markers refillable? No, these markers are not refillable. You can only use them once, and these are use and throw markers. That could have been a disadvantage for these markers, but these markers are so cheap and reasonable that even if their ink is over and you cannot use them, you can again buy the same color marker in very less price. Which takes me to my next point, that is their price. They are cheap, they are affordable and reasonable. They come in different set of markers, that is starting from 40, 60, 80 and 120 set of markers. A set of 40 markers will cost you around $17, and a set of 80 markers will cost you around $35 to $40. Initially I bought this set of 60 markers from an art store which had almost all the colors I needed for drawing anime characters. This set had 3 to 4 shades in all primary colors, that is red, yellow, blue and green, 2 to 3 shades for skin tones, and 2 to 3 shades in all different types of grays, that is cool grey, warm grey, green grey and blue grey, 6 to 7 shades in brown color, and also few shades for other colors like purple, orange, violet, pink, etc, etc. So I started coloring with a set of 60 Touchsoft color markers. These markers really helped me a lot to improve my drawing skills, but the more shades you have, the better it is, because you'll have more varieties and options and different types of color shades. And a set of 80 markers will cost you around $40 to $45, whereas a set of 72 Copic sketch markers will cost you around $300 to $350, which is a very big difference in price. And artists don't often have so much of money with them, and even if they have money, it's a huge risk to invest such a huge amount in just a set of Copic markers, especially for beginners who have never used any alcohol based color markers. And if you compare price between one individual Touchsoft marker and one individual Copic marker, then Touchsoft marker will cost you even less than $1. And if you go to buy a Copic sketch marker, that will cost you around $6 to $7, which takes me to my next point: where do you get them? So you can buy them online from Amazon or eBay or from an art store. A good thing about buying them from an art store is that obviously they have all the sets of markers, but also they sell different shades of markers individually, and you can buy them as per your needs. But if you buy them online from Amazon or eBay, you will probably get Touch 5 or Touch Cool markers, not Touchsoft, which I have. But there's not really any difference between them, because their price is the same, they function the same. The only difference is in their names: Touch 5, Touch Cool, Touch Soft, even Touch New. But I have not come across any major difference between these markers. I'll be sharing the link in the description, you can have a look there. So to summarize this, let's list down their pros and cons. Let's start with pros. First is they are cheap and reasonable and anyone can afford them. Second, they are suitable for beginners who have never used any alcohol based markers and want to try coloring with alcohol based markers. Third, they are really good for practicing before moving to more professional markers like Copic. You can experience and practice. Fourth, they are safe because you're not investing a huge amount of money here like Copic. If you are not really sure about using alcohol markers for coloring and you don't want to take a risk and invest such a huge amount in professional markers like Copic, so you can try these markers where you are not investing such a huge amount, and then you can decide to upgrade to more professional markers, that is Copic. Fifth, they have a brush tip which is really useful for coloring, and they have a broad tip which is also useful for coloring larger areas. Talking about their cons, first is you cannot get a very professional work with these markers. Second, they cannot be refilled and you'll have to buy new markers from an art store individually or in set, or from online where probably again you'll have to buy a set of markers. Third and last is their availability is not as wide as Copic. Copic are very well known and popular, so that's why you can get them easily from online or art store individually or in a set. So these were the pros and cons of Touchsoft markers. So yes, they are a good alternative for Copic. That was all I knew about Touchsoft markers. I think I have covered up everything. If you still have any questions or queries, you can ask me down below in comment section. So I hope this video is helpful for you all, because so many of you have been constantly asking me about Touchsoft markers in almost all of my videos. If you find this video helpful, then drop a like and do subscribe, because I'll be making more these kind of videos. Do follow me on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook at Aayush pencilart for my latest drawing updates. I'll be also sharing the links down below. More awesome videos are going to come up in future, so ring the bell to get notified whenever I'm on YouTube. That's it for now. I'll see you all in my next video. Bye bye.